All right, everybody, welcome back to I Mix What I Like. Do all the things to support the platform, hit all the buttons. But it's time to take a relatively quick look at what is possibly the worst interview of all time. So this recent interview with on the Breakfast Club with Andrew Young and Jamal Bryant to talk about and promote the NBC Universal military industrial complex, ad revenue, content driven MSNBC and Rachel Maddow executively produced documentary about Andrew Young called The Dirty Work. And what I'm going to try to quickly show you in a few short clips is that this interview and clearly the documentary, which I would expect some of us to have much more to say about in the near future, so please stay tuned, is that The Dirty Work is clearly a de-radicalizing rebranding of Black liberation meant to praise not just those who do the work that no one credits, but those who do the work of undermining the revolution by capitulating to capital and colonialism. This discussion, and perhaps the documentary, is designed to slickly replace an appropriate praise of those who do all the dirty work and the grunt work behind the scenes to promote movements and make movements work, who often go uncredited. But it's a sleek way of replacing them as the focus with those who are perhaps less famous, but should be understood as infamously working again to undermine and to be the antithesis of those with whom they want to associate. So, for instance, all the references we're going to see here to Dr. King and Malcolm X, it's a false association of Andy Young and Jamal Bryant, Black bourgeoisie, Black capitalist, anti-revolutionary reactionaries, associating themselves with revolutionaries as if they are the heirs and the legitimate continuation of those struggles. It's diabolical. So we'll look at a couple of clips. I'm going to play them in 1.5 times speed, put the link to the full, again, possibly the worst interview of all time in the show description if you want to see it. But this is probably a rare occasion where I'm going to ask you to take my word for it and to not bother wasting your time watching the entire thing. But just in case you want to do your due diligence, please, by all means, suffer through it as I did.
So Dr. King didn't like conflict. So he was a conflict manager. Mm-hmm. So he was the one inside the staff. You had crazy people on the left and crazy folks sort of over here trying to do revolutions. Mm-hmm. Dr. King didn't want conflict. Mm-hmm. So he would expect Ambassador Young to knock heads.
That's part of the dirty work.
Right. That's it.
Yeah. Just that right there, I wanted to play that just as a quick, slick, or an example of the slick disparaging of the left, of those two, the political left of those two gentlemen and those hosting the interview. This is part of what this interview and probably the documentary is designed to do, to again rebrand the movement, rebrand what was being done and what was of value, and to suggest that the crazies on the left who wanted an actual revolution, socialism, revolutionary nationalism, anti-colonialism, anti-capitalism, those crazies had to be balanced, he's suggesting, that is, Brian is suggesting, by Young, suggesting King didn't want conflict, so he let Young go out and deal with the crazies on the left, which is a complete bastardization of Dr. King. So let me just say, as I'll probably say a few times in this video, please go to my channel here, go to Black Liberation Media, search the channel for Dr. King, for Jamal Bryant, and avail yourself of all of the countless hours of work that debunks this narrative about Dr. King in particular, and debunks the attempted narrative creation of people like Jamal Bryant to suggest that Black capitalism and the Black bourgeoisie and Black entrepreneurialism is an extension of Black liberation, when it is the antithesis. It is there to negate those more radical revolutionary efforts. So that was just one quick example of what this interview tries to do. He just slips in little disparaging remarks about the left as if they're just crazy.
When Dr. King was assassinated, the FBI told him the instructions for the shooter: if you miss the dreamer, kill the strategist.
The fuck is he talking about?
One corner and attack.
You heard that?
When Dr. King was assassinated, the FBI told him the instructions for the shooter: if you miss the dreamer, kill the strategist. So he's been.
So I don't know what it is that he's attempting to say here, because on the one hand, he's saying the FBI is aware of the instructions that were given to the shooter. So is this a tacit admission of the long-standing claim with resounding evidence and even a trial led by King's former lawyer, William Pepper, to show that the state was complicit in King's assassination, the 1999 trial against the state versus Lloyd Jowers. Is that what he's referring to? And then, so on the one hand, he's saying the FBI was aware of the instructions to the shooter, but then they don't elaborate on that. So the only elaboration that he offers is that the instructions were, if you can't kill the dreamer, get the strategist, as if Andy Young was ever a target. This is a diabolical rebranding and rewriting of history. Andy Young is not mentioned in the counterintelligence papers as a potential target or a replacement of Dr. King or a replacement of Malcolm X as the Black Messiah. Andrew Young is not listed as that. And then to diminish Dr. King as a dreamer, which has always been my problem with the picture at the DC location for Busboys and Poets, saying that King was a dreamer, is to diminish what King was actually up to, that he was in Memphis to help organize striking labor, to support the sanitation workers, to encourage more unionization among labor, to support working people, not the bourgeoisie, not the Black capitalist class. Dr. King had a tactic and a strategy of direct action and nonviolence and direct action. He wanted redistribution, an end of capitalism, an end of militarism, and was convinced that white people were not psychologically organized to overcome their racism, and felt that the Black bourgeoisie was fraudulently taking credit and the benefits of all the struggle that those in Black liberation efforts were engaged in. So what is Bryant saying here, other than to falsely promote Young as some revolutionary and threat, and to suggest that what he and Young are up to today is some sort of revolutionary activity? King was assassinated so that people like Young and Jamal Bryant could fill that void with their Black capitalist reactionary negations of King and other more militant and revolutionary efforts. I mean, that's an appalling. But I'm amazed that he's saying here apparently that the FBI was aware of the instructions to the shooter, and there's no elaboration on that other than to falsely construct this narrative around Andy Young. It's absurd.
All this time, UN ambassador, first Black UN ambassador in the history of the United States under Carter, first congressman since Reconstruction in the South, brought the Olympics to Atlanta, made Atlanta international city, mayor.
Again, all of these are expanding U.S. empire as an ambassador, expanding U.S. capital investment opportunities, and opening up Atlanta to international investment and capital. It obviously didn't change the conditions of the people in Atlanta. It made a lot of business people some money and some officials some money, but it didn't change the material conditions of Black people or poor people in Atlanta or Georgia.
Presidential Medal of Freedom awardee, French Foreign Legion awardee, 150 honorary doctorate degrees, brought venture capital to Africa, liberated.
Honorary doctorates are, I think, silly awards given when you get a big check to speak at a university. It's not an earned degree of any kind. So what that suggests is all those 100 and whatever honorary doctors he said to have, they come with big paychecks and no work and no contribution intellectually or academically to those institutions or anywhere else. So it's just giving somebody an award for doing all of this state-sponsored, anti-revolutionary, anti-Black liberation work.
Zimbabwe helped get Mandela out of prison. But
liberate Zimbabwe, I know, we all know that's not true. Zimbabwe is not liberated. South Africa is not liberated. So helping free Mandela, which if people understand the history of the Azanian liberation struggle, they know that with all due respect, the freeing of Mandela came at the cost of the freeing of the rest of the community. They had to sacrifice liberating the country for the singular, or the handful of freedom and release given to Mandela and his comrades. So I mean, this is a neo-colonial rebrand right here.
Beneath all this is, I'm here because my friend was shot. Mm-hmm. So he couldn't enjoy any of it. He give all his money away. He's been a servant his whole life, and he's the closest thing we have to Nelson Mandela. But he
had to stay in jail for 30 years.
Yes,
and that was one of the things I was guilty about. Everybody else had been.
So there it is. So he's saying, I have survivor's guilt because I didn't get shot, I didn't spend time in jail, and all I've done is come out here and get all this money and make all this, get all these checks and take all the credit for all this work that other people have done. And when Jamal Bryant says he's our Nelson Mandela, I think we should again raise an eyebrow about what that is supposed to mean, because Mandela's release ran parallel with a recolonization of the rest of the Black community. So that's exactly what's being said here. The privileges and the benefits and the credit all going to Andy Young is because Dr. King was assassinated. Others were politically imprisoned, also assassinated, exiled, et cetera, and so forth. He's able to sit here and do all this because Assata Shakur had to die in Cuba. So this idea that again, he's the extension, or that yeah, you may have survivor's guilt, but the guilt is probably more associated with the political turn, the reactionary political turn, than it is in just the mere survival, or at least perhaps it should be. And by the way, if you notice, a lot of the clips I'm playing come from statements made by Jamal Bryant, because he's the one adding the narrative rebranding and the color, so to speak, to the relatively boring, bland, and in many ways historically inaccurate comments of Andrew Young. But what Bryant is here to do is to clearly set the context and the frame for appreciating Andrew Young, who is clearly here doing work with Jamal Bryant, who then gets to attach himself for his own purposes to this luminary. But in each case, they are politically aligned, because Andrew Young, as Dr. King said, and we'll come back to this, was a capitalist, and King said, "I'm not." So, and this was in a hostile exchange, demonstrating the difference. But again, please check the work. Read "Prophet of Discontent." See our interviews with Andrew Douglas and Jared Loggins, all in the show description, and more on Black Liberation Media and on my channel and at imixwhatilike.org. So, I mean, in that part, I don't want you to take my word for it. Please investigate the radical Dr. King and the claims I'm making around that. I'm just suggesting you don't need to watch this entire interview as I have.
Question. There were rules, just like you have here. He's being humble again. It was strategy. By the way, it wasn't we got the business people to take down the whites only signs. He did.
Yeah.
Dr. King would shut the economy down. In 6 weeks, they marched. They knew that 60% of the residents were Black.
Right.
The dollar was the same dollar. So after 6 weeks, the merchants were, the wallets were on fire. Then Dr. King would send Andy Young in, Pastor Young. Andy, he called him Andy. Go in there quietly. Take your overalls off. Put your business suit on. Go behind closed doors. Cut a deal. Don't embarrass them. Don't humiliate them. We want them to win too.
But you heard it there.
Message.
So first of all, it's the claim that Dr. King came in, did the march, shut down the economy, and then it was Andy Young who came in there and cut the deal to make the deal with the business, with the merchants, et cetera, and so forth. But what they consistently leave out in all of this is Dr. King's evolving radical politics and his eventual condemnation of just this kind of work, in terms of recognizing the short-sighted, limited positive impact that there is in engaging around buying Black and consumerism and all this other kind of stuff, which is why he said in his final book, Where Do We Go From Here? He said explicitly, buying Black and banking Black and stuff like that do not work. We need massive billions of dollars of investment into the Black community from the federal government. So again, whether you agree with King on that or not, it's just that he is being misrepresented here, so that these two can continue to fraudulently claim to be the extension of Dr. King's work, when they are the negation. They are simply, again, Black capitalist business people looking to get white corporate investment, white support, and revenue for themselves and their Black class bourgeois business community, which is what Dr. King specifically targeted as fraudulently taking advantage of all the work of all the civil rights and Black liberation efforts. But that's what these two are up to. And instead of just being honest and saying this is where we disagree with King, and while we're doing this, they say, no, King wanted us to do this, and we're just continuing the work today. And that's just absolutely incorrect.
Yeah,
But by the way, clearly they knew it because they told him if you can't
because
kill a dreamer.
He was
Because
a strategist. But there was rules. There were roles. Everybody had a role. He had a role.
Yeah.
Dr. King had a role. The crazy people had a role in the movement.
But-
the women had a role.
Yeah.
See, there he
The
goes
kids
again
are-
with the crazy people.
The-
And who are the crazy people? The left. But anyway, and they rebrand, and they come back again with that whole claim around, don't shoot, if you can't shoot the dreamer, shoot the strategist, which is absurd, because remember, Andy Young was not the strategist. If anything, the federal government was arguing that Marxists and communists like Stanley Levinson were the real strategists behind Dr. King. And what the Washington Post called out, and I'm going to come back to that point in a minute, was that at the end of King's life was that Kwame Ture and the Black Powerites were the real influence and the strategists of Dr. King, not Andy Young. So that's, again, fraudulent and false. And that's why King was targeted, because he was not listening to Andy Young, who just wanted to neoliberal black capitalist his way to relative freedom for himself. And King wanted an actual revolution for the black community and for the world.
I get tired of playing that Uncle Tom role. He said, yeah, but you've been doing it all your life and you ain't gonna quit now.
Why do they call being calm and level-headed and using strategy being an Uncle Tom? Like, that doesn't make
Because when everybody's mad and you calm, see, then they think something's wrong with you.
A man thought that the most courageous, manly thing he can do was to go to jail. Going to prison, getting your rear end whipped was a badge of honor. By the way, strategically, they put women and children in those marches. They didn't want Charlemagne or me, or they didn't want, because that was aggression against aggression. Yeah. You wanted to get the sympathy from the TV cameras and the media. So they put women and children. That was strategic.
No, we didn't put it.
Well,
the men wouldn't come.
Okay, well, that's okay. All right.
It's wrong, bro.
Whatever it was, it worked out. Ambassador Young, so Dr. King had actually a ferocious sense of humor, but he didn't want to be like that because he didn't think people were going to take him seriously. So he was like boxed in, but he had this important role. He needed him to play a role. Yeah. And the one time he didn't play his role, Dr. King got upset with him. The one time, it was only one time.
What was the time?
So I just wanted to play that little bit because that's actually false. And that's where, if you read Prophet of Discontent, if you read the SCLC leadership speeches during the summers of 1966 and 67, you'll read the reality that this was not the only time King got mad at Andy Young. King got mad at Andy Young specifically around the question of socialism and capitalism, where Dr. King said, "You're a capitalist and I'm not." And he was mad at Andy for trying to drag the movement ever more to the center and to the right. And Dr. King wanted to go ever to the left, beyond what Andy Young and the establishment civil rights leaders wanted, which is why at the end of Dr. King's life, the establishment of the civil rights movement were against King, were hostile to King. So this is a complete fabrication that is being conducted here.
Traffic comes to growing cities. Traffic comes to growing cities, which you built in Atlanta, by the way. $800 billion. $580 billion GDP. The same. So Atlanta's bigger GDP than Singapore. And he built it. He and the people he just talked about, they built that into what my wife calls Wakanda. And there's nothing like it in the entire world.
So that's again, I just wanted to show that there again, that their political orientation is towards a Wakanda. And again, what is a Wakanda? A black bourgeois, disconnected, narrow nationalist, anti-pan-Africanist, pro-colonial state that exists under a monarchy handed down through familial descent. What kind of nonsense is that should be supported? And please check all of our ongoing criticism of those movies and those politics. But again, here, when Jamal Bryant talks about the GDP, he's talking about a measurement of the wealth created for those who own the economy, for the actual capitalist class, for, in some cases, the petty black bourgeoisie. That's all that is benefiting from this. The people of Atlanta, the working people, the average person is not benefiting in a way that's being projected here, and certainly not in a way that Dr. King was advocating for.
There's all this work and all the sacrifice that you guys put in. When Martin Luther King was here, he wasn't as liked and as revered by everybody as he is today. How do you feel when you see?
No, he almost was.
Almost. Talk about that.
I mean, there were a few people who were jealous of him.
Everything that guy just said is bullshit. Thank you.
See, this is nonsense. So she asked a very good question. Dr. King was not liked at the end of his life, and this is true. You can see my presentations on this. You can see many other people's work on this, where as I've shown, the press headlines, the mainstream civil rights leadership, they did not like King. They were calling him a buffoon. They were saying that he was a failed leader. They were saying that he was doing too much by connecting the civil rights struggle here to the decolonial, anti-colonial movements going around, happening around the world in Africa, Latin America, et cetera, by connecting the Black freedom struggle here to the anti-Vietnam War effort. Doing all of that made Andy Young and others hate him, made the mainstream press hate Dr. King. So this is complete nonsense. Within 90 days of his assassination, the Washington Post was condemning Dr. King as a Stalinist and a Leninist, or as a Leninist rather, whose work was going to be taken over by Kwame Ture and the Black Power community. So this was that Dr. King was moving too much in that direction, to be more specific. So for Andy Young to sit here and say that no, everybody, this is again an absurd rebranding of history.
Who wanted to be him But they were preachers too.
And it wasn't the people that were mad at him were not just jealous preachers that wanted his fame. They were mad at him because his more left-leaning politics were threatening the resources they were getting from liberal ruling elites. So would likely increase the threat from the state and the repressive efforts to destroy the liberation struggles in Black America and around the world. So and throughout the country and in other communities and around the world. So what he's saying here, this is nonsense.
You have to watch your enemies, but you see them better if you bring them closer and try to get them involved in what you're doing.
Which is probably what he was doing when he was arguing with Andy Young in those summer retreats with the SCLC, saying that Andy Young is a problem and too conservative and was a capitalist.
Now we're getting into a real conversation.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about the team that you and Clarence Avant formed?
Oh, Lord.
So Charlemagne just asked him about Clarence Avant, who's known as the Black Godfather, somebody I've criticized a lot, including that documentary that came out a couple years ago. It's garbage. But I'm just reminded here, look at this background here, iHeartRadio, The Breakfast Club. So iHeartRadio, a Clear Channel disciple, part of the post-1996 Telecommunications Act, consolidation of media, allowing fewer to own more media. This is what took over radio, got rid of Black Radio News. Please check the history and the work of the late, great Glenn Ford on all of this. This is exactly why we end up in these spaces where you have nominally Black discussions that are absent news, absent radical critical thought, absent legitimate histories of these struggles and analysis of the time and analysis of today and the moment. And this interview, and then they're talking about a documentary again in MSNBC, MS Now, Universal, product that is going to again come out to rebrand and reshape what we think we understand about this history and who these folks are and what our actual political movement should look like going forward.
I tell you, that is he's one of the most beautiful brothers I've ever met.
Love him.
And then this Clarence Avant character, remember again, this was a Black man hired by the white music industry to bring in Black talent that would be signed to these these contracts, and was essentially the broadly speaking the artisan repertoire for the entire Black musical community for a white music industry. So Avant was a well-paid and supported by white funding to bring in Black people to make money for white-owned music. It's perfect that Andy Young and Charlemagne and them love him so much because that's, of course, what they benefit from. The Black gatekeepers hired by white rulers of society to bring in the versions of Blackness that the white ruling elite find acceptable. So it makes perfect sense that they all love this guy so much.
Called me when we came in the back door. Who was standing next in the back door with Malcolm X? Two people, Malcolm X and Nelson Rockefeller. And Malcolm X said, I just wanted to thank you for all that you've done, and I want you to know that I am with you in anything you want me to do. But I think that it's probably a better strategy if you and I don't seem to be so close. And said, that's why I'm not going to come in there with you in public.
He wasn't trying to profile.
See?
Malcolm X was not trying to take
But
his life.
when
Malcolm used to disparage. Malcolm used to disparage Martin publicly sometimes. We call him Uncle Tom.
That was his brand.
It wasn't Malcolm so much as it was that whole crowd around Elijah Muhammad. Now, but
Martin was close to Elijah too. It seems like.
I know.
All right, so we're going to leave it there. The reference to Malcolm and this claim that Malcolm was friendly with Andy Young and somehow hanging out in the back room with Nelson Rockefeller and was saying, Andy, I like you and support. All of that is conflating a lot of different timelines in history. Dr. King was critical. Malcolm X was critical of Dr. King for a time, changed his tactic in terms of publicly condemning mainstream civil rights leaders, went to re-engage the civil rights movement to radicalize it when he left the Nation of Islam, and was looking to increasingly do that, including working with Dr. King tacitly and in some ways willing to do so publicly had King not been arrested and in jail when Malcolm went to Selma to support them, and ended up giving that famous speech to the youth. But here Andy Young is trying to present it as if he and Malcolm were all cool and were more or less headed in the same direction, and not acknowledging not just the differences politically in terms of calling people Uncle Toms or white people devils or whatever else, But in terms of the leftward break that Malcolm and King had been making from a lot of the mainstream leadership for a long time, Malcolm, of course, ahead of King in his anti-capitalism, anti-militarism, anti-imperialist stances, but that's the trajectory they were all going in. So this idea that they were on the same page is again part of what makes this absurd. And again, when they make this reference quickly to King being friendly with Elijah Muhammad, yes, King did go meet with Elijah Muhammad as part of his willingness to engage those on his left and in other segments of the Black liberation struggle. And this was in part why both of those men were targeted by the counterintelligence program, unlike Andrew Young and those engaging in Black capitalism. So it's a conflated timeline to suggest that King and Andrew Young and Malcolm X were all kind of all hanging out and concocting a scheme in which in 2025 Jamal Bryant and Andrew Young would in any way be seen as legitimate heirs to that struggle. So that's the absolute fraudulence. All right, look, don't let any failures of mine in breaking this down inhibit you from re-engaging the real histories of Dr. King and Malcolm X and Black liberation in its entirety. I just wanted to do something relatively quickly to add whatever voice I can to the voices that would be condemning this as what has to be
the worst interview of all time.
For again claiming that the dirty work is anything other than a de-radicalizing rebranding of Black liberation in an effort to praise not just those who do the work that no one credits, but those who do the work of undermining the revolution by capitulating to capital and colonialism. Peace, everybody. Only if you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say, and I'll catch you next time right here at...
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.